While the outcome of the UK's referendum on its relationship with the European Union was a surprise to many, the Brexit result, according to the newly installed Prime Minister, Theresa May, means Brexit. Before the vote, IG had the pleasure of speaking to Dr. Jim Phillips, the CEO of Midatech Pharma, a London-listed and UK-based specialty pharmaceutical company focused on targeted therapies for rare diseases with unmet medical need. And this is what Jim told us about the prospects of being outside the EU.
I run a business that's across Europe. There's a massive impact in things like European supply chain, where in my industry, over 19 billion of intermediates is shipped in and out of the UK and traded through the European supply chain that we have access to. For us as a business, being outside would give us a lot more problems in terms of the way that we operate.
Additionally, he also told us that measures would have to be taken if the vote went to the Leave camp.
We're international, we're in America too, so
Right.
We're used to working across territories and under the World Trade Organization regime. So I think we will just chart our path, but it won't be done on day one because we won't know what's going to happen and how the 2 years will pan out. And I expect it would be business as usual while the exit itself is worked out. But we'll take measures and steps so that we can protect our business going forward so that it can continue to grow.
Now, it's our pleasure to be able to steal 10 minutes out of Jim's day today to have him back in to discuss how he feels in the wake of the vote to leave the EU. Jim, welcome. Hi. I know it wasn't the result that you wanted, but here we are now, a month further on. What have you been doing?
We've been continuing business as usual. There's been no reason in the outcome of the result to change that because there is no pathway yet that has been negotiated or even started to be negotiated which we can work out the impact on our industry and our business.
Okay, let's look at the future then. What do you need to see as a chief executive of a company that reports in pounds? You're based here in London, you're listed in London, but also I know listed in the States through the NASDAQ. You earn dollars, and I know also you have an interest in euros. What would you like to see from the British government?
Well, I think that for us, we want certainty over what's going to happen as quickly as possible. So, you know, it would be helpful to us for the government to keep our industry and I guess other industries informed as to how they're going to tackle and consult with us as to how they're going to tackle issues like access to the European market, regulatory, so the regulation of medicines, which the European Medicines Agency is here in London, gives us access to one regulatory pathway for our products to the whole of Europe. How are we going to have to manage that in the future? And you know, if these things are considered and our inputs from our industry and the Bioindustry Association taken into account, then I think we'll be able to rest easier.
I know that prior to Theresa May's installation as the new PM, George Freeman, MP, the Conservative MP, had been a Minister for Life Sciences, and I think it went down on record that I believe that the UK is one of the few, if not the only, political regime that had someone specifically designated to life sciences. Now, it seems like he's been taken away from that and that post has not been filled. Do you think that's going to be an issue?
I think it's a disappointment. He was a very effective life sciences minister. He'd worked in the life sciences industry, so he knew the industry incredibly well. He was very supportive. And so if we lose that role in government, whoever has that role, it's a loss for us within government and for a voice for what we're doing.
Yeah, you mentioned the European Medicines Agency, the EMA, which is based here in London. Do you think that's likely to continue? Is that anything to do with the EU, or is that a wider European appointment for us here in London?
I think we have to see. I think there's a high risk that it may well get relocated elsewhere.
And is that a problem for you and the rest of the business?
In itself, it's not a problem, but if we don't have access to medicines, getting medicines regulated through that one agency, rather than through all the national agencies, then that would give us a problem. So again, it's the mechanics of how our relationship with that agency versus the national agencies that regulate medicines in each country going forward that's critically important.
How about looking at the UK and the rest of Europe from outside? I mean, clearly, when we're part of a larger group, it's a lot easier for drug regulation and drug approvals and so forth if we were one big body. Do you foresee that being an issue further on down the line? I mean, for example, for the registration of drugs abroad, for example, if we got something here that you produce as a British company, do you foresee more problems in bringing that to market? Or do you think that if it's a good enough drug, you'll get there anyway?
I think if it's a good enough drug, it will get there, but there may be more time needed to be spent on discussions with more regulatory agencies, and if we don't have access to a single European authorization, which is where we plan to regulate most of our medicines, then there are other places around the world that refer to the European Medicines Agency's decisions as part of their decision-making process. So that would add another complexity to what we have to do to get products to market. But at the end of the day, if you have a very good medicine, there's no doubt it will generally get to market without too many problems.
One of the points you mentioned, and especially going back to our interview on the 6th of May, that you were talking then about funding coming in from Europe for companies such as yourself. I mean, I don't know how much money you have received or the industry receives here in the UK, but that presumably is now in threat, is it?
Well, it's at risk. So we won as part of a European consortium a €7.9 million grant a couple of years ago, which we're halfway through. So in fact, that work will have finished by the time Brexit has happened. Access to that kind of funding as part of consortia going forward may be restricted, and we're slightly unusual in that we have a European subsidiary in our Spanish manufacturing and R&D arm. And so that part of the business may still be able to access European funds. And we're obviously looking at how to maximise our ability to do that going forward. But in the UK, where part of that grant was allocated to the UK, that part would be missed in the future. And we will have to lobby through the Industry Association and to government to replace the kind of grants that we're able to access in Europe with something different here in the UK.
What about your business from an economic point of view? We've got a lower sterling. You do report in pounds. How does all that work out in the numbers?
Well, we're a slightly strange beast in that we're more like a multinational in that we earn in dollars and we spend in pounds and euros with our three main sites. So the dollar strengthening against the pound is helpful. The euro strengthening against the pound is not helpful. On balance, the effect is neutral to positive on us for the second half of the year. That's assuming exchange rates stay where they are today. But as a UK company, a lower exchange rate and a weaker pound at some point in time when our products go to market will be helpful to us as an exporter.
One of the pieces we played from you when we spoke on the 6th of May, you were talking then about you will do what's necessary for the profitability and the growth of the company. In fact, I pushed you on that at the time, and it's on record in the interview that you were saying ultimately, I think you were questioning the need or the importance of being based here in the UK, and potentially you could well look outside. Do you see that still as an option?
I think the UK still carries plenty of positives for staying here. So, the recent moves on corporation tax, for example, will be a great example of something that would make it very hard for companies like us to want to move abroad. It would be relatively easy for us to do it, given that we already have an operation in Spain and a subsidiary nominally in Switzerland. But I think given where we are today, we won't be making any decisions to do anything like that unless the Brexit negotiations turn into a quagmire and a nightmare.
Yeah, and of course you're also listed on the NASDAQ, as I said earlier. Does that help as well? Is that an option? I mean, Boston, Massachusetts is a really big hub for companies such as yourself.
Well, our US subsidiaries further south in North Carolina.
Right.
We clearly have our presence in the US, but for the time being, our headquarters and our centre of operations is still going to be here in Oxford.
Yeah. Let's talk as well a little bit about where you go from here, because if we are led to believe that the UK is pushing to become a hub for life sciences, and presumably that will underscore the importance of at least remaining here in part, if not in whole. Do you see that as a way forward for the UK? Do you think that that's something that the UK is working towards? Are you confident that they've got sufficient amount of negotiating power and perhaps maybe also positioning already to enable us to become a leading area around the world for this?
I think realistically we're already a leading hub for life sciences, both in Europe and globally. There's intense competition between all the centres, the American centres such as San Francisco, Boston, and up-and-coming ones in other places like Singapore. So there will always be a competition for talent and for where these hubs are built. It's been very easy for the UK to attract talent because of the European Union. So we have employees, and we had a new one join us last week from Lithuania. And we have great employees that we can pick the best of the crop of PhDs from around Europe. If that becomes more difficult, it puts an added barrier in where the UK actually continuing to be a leader, but I don't think it's insurmountable, and it would need the government to ensure that we're investing continuously in life sciences, in encouraging graduates and undergraduates to go into the life sciences world, and making it relatively easy for us to be able to bring in talent when and where we need to if the freedom of movement has gone.
Okay, one final question is, how's the second half of the year looking? Here we are now almost actually at the end of July, into the back end of 2016.
So we've had a strong year so far. We'll be doing a trading update shortly to the city on the first half, and then first half results beginning of September. And we're looking, good for the rest of the year as we speak today. So this year's been one of real progress so far for us, and we're looking to continue that through till the end.
Okay, Jim, well, look, we hope to be hearing some more from you when those numbers come out, but thanks indeed there for joining us. That's Dr. Jim Phillips, the Chief Executive of Midatech.